Hello, everybody. And greetings once again, my friends, to another awesome episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, June 7th, 2019, after a month-long absence. That month was absolute insanity. I cannot begin to tell you guys all the crap that happened. But let's get into, first of all, introducing our panel, and then we'll get into the insanity of it before we get into the stories. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drac. I hope everybody's had an awesome month so far. For me, obviously, we'll get into that in a second. But first of all, I want to introduce my panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow content creators, fellow awesome guys in general. And if you guys aren't following their content, what the crap is wrong with you? You should be doing that, and you should be doing that daily, damn it. And let's go ahead and start things off with Alex the Shadow Blazer, who has decided to grace us out of the shadows, but into the almost death-defying light. Are you going to be okay, Shadow Blazer? That light might just kill you.
I have to work under fluorescence all day long, so I'll be okay.
Okay, all right.
I prefer the natural light anyway, or the soft glow of dated bulbs, but yeah, I'll be fine.
All right, how have you been this long month, Alex?
Not great. Ups and downs, I guess. Just, I haven't been much on the content creation like I should be. I kept putting it off and trying to get myself motivated. Finally, I've gotten myself motivated. I've been working on something the last 3 days. I'm expecting all hell to break loose when it goes up, just from content ID and crap. But we'll see when it goes up, and we'll see if I can't, if I get troubles with that, if I run into problems, if I can't tweak it enough to get the content ID off my back. The best I can always hope for when I have something like this, where I incorporate a lot of sound and footage, is that it just gets monetized by the copyright claimant, which I don't monetize my videos anyway, so it doesn't bother me if they want to monetize it.
Well, and one thing I also want to kind of point out, because I think it's going to be a recurring theme, especially with some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, is we're all pretty much taking a break from content creation. Mm-hmm. It's one of the parts that's made this month very insane is a lot of the crazy making happening within YouTube. But we'll obviously get to that in a soon story. But let's go ahead and introduce the other panelist here, Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash, and actually also taking a brief respite on his own. Romney, how have you been this past month?
Well, been doing fairly well. I mean, let's face it, this month has kind of kicked all of our collective asses, so we've all been having to recover in various ways. In my case, it's more or less been stepping away, working on my own mental health, trying to rediscover some passions. On the upside, I managed to finally finish Gosei Sentai Die Ranger, which I just have to say the ending...
It's weird, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, what? I mean, I just have to say here, slight spoilers for people who haven't seen Die Ranger, which, then again, it's a 30-year-old Sentai series, but if Toei doesn't decide to do a new Die Ranger series in 2049, to tie things together, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah, I know, really right? Like, I just remember me and Andrea watching it and going, "What? Wait, what? What?" Because we just couldn't keep track of any of it.
Yeah, and
that's all right because Kaku Ranger is proving to be just as difficult a beast.
Yeah, but that's pretty much the Sentai series in a nutshell. It always keeps you guessing, keeps you going. And in addition to that, also making sure to get some reading done, reading through the backlog of comics that I keep buying on impulse when I really shouldn't, but I do anyway because I don't want to fall behind. So I'm at least finally caught up with Shattered Grid and Beyond the Grid, which Beyond the Grid, not the weirdest ending, but, well, it's tolerable. It has its ups and downs.
I was going to say, don't spoil it because I'm still debating, like, I want to pick this comic series up, and I kind of want to do something talking about it with you at some point, just because I've heard nothing but good things about it. I've heard some really great storytelling happening in it. So right now, the only thing that's been holding me back is spare time, which I've had virtually none.
Yeah, and I don't really blame you. And so that's kind of how my month has been. It's just been me trying to reconnect and rekindle some other much long neglected passions of mine that I've had to set aside because of the beast that is YouTube.
Indeed. As for me, unfortunately, I have to make a confession right here and now to our listeners. A majority of the reasons that we took so long to get back were mostly on my end. I can't even begin to explain every one of them. I actually tried to look back into chat logs just to see if I could find all of them, but let's sum things up as best as possible. My kids got sick. I got sick. Cars got broke. And also, unfortunately, as most of you guys know, but a lot of listeners of the podcast don't know, my mother passed away in the middle of May. And so, unfortunately, a lot of missed weeks were also because we had to get her affairs in order. We had to empty out 2 apartments because she actually, for the last week and a half of her life, was going to move down here where she was living about an hour away from us. She was going to move into assisted living. And so they'd already set up the apartment for assisted living, which we had to clean out. And then we also still hadn't cleaned out her original apartment up in Logan. And so I've basically the last week or so been making back and forth trips to Logan to help empty out her apartment. So, but one thing before we get started into stuff, I want to reach out to all the listeners that showed support during that time. It actually was a lot harder than even I kind of expected it would be. And this is coming from a guy who told you 5 years ago that his dad passed away. And so I was already still kind of recovering from those scars. And then my mom passed away out of nowhere. And so I wanted to thank everybody for the support and the emails and the tweets and DMs that I got during that difficult time. I really do appreciate the fact that my community that I'm only asking you guys to sit back and listen to me rant about geek stuff once a week cared enough to be able to send me like a thank you card or not a thank you card, but like a sorry for your loss card kind of thing. And so I really did appreciate all that, and I did want to at least make that statement known. But let's bring people up to speed. So literally the last podcast that was recorded was the review of Avengers Endgame. Hence why we've been gone for, in YouTube's case, longer than a month. Because we did record that exclusively for the RSS feed. And while we were gone, I don't know how this happens, Alex and Romney. You guys need to explain this to me. You really do. Whenever we take breaks, I know I'm going to people are going to get pissed at me for cursing, but shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it other than that. We could have really slow weeks where we're just waiting for a big story to happen. Give it a week of one of us getting sick, and there you go. Big story.
Well, I mean, on the upside, it could just be a case where maybe it's an unintentional defense mechanism where we're thinking, oh, we don't realize it, but it's like when animals suddenly kind of hunker down when they sense an earthquake is coming. It's just like, oh, something big's going to happen. Let's wait for the shelling to stop. Let's wait for the dust to settle, so that way we can get to the facts.
So here's the bottom line with a lot of the stories that came in. We got a lot of listener suggestions, some of which are going to get addressed tonight. There might be some that after E3 get addressed again, but unfortunately some of them we may just kind of have to broach simply because some of them will be ongoing stories. I have a feeling we'll be talking about them a lot more, but some of them are kind of fleeting and might not have developments, so they might get talked about, they might not. I will try and get them in during slow weeks or something like that if I don't think they're too old, kind of thing. But we are back, so let's get started into the month of insanity that happened while we were gone. And really the biggest ones that we got listener requests for were 2 prominent stories. Both are, well, one is brand new because we really haven't talked about it. Me and Alex have a little bit, but the other one is an update. So without further ado, let's get into our first story of the night. Certainly not our top story, somewhere near the bottom. Pro Jared. Well, that crap happened.
Yep.
I wish I could give you guys a thorough timeline of events. I even found an article that is a timeline of events to explain all of this. So here's the thing. if I don't explain this properly, Internet, I'm sorry. But there's a
Well,
lot of crap that happened.
Well, to be fair, that's why I'm here, to basically fill the gaps. And I'm basically the guy that if you make a mistake, I'll probably be the first to call you out.
Well, the first thing, the funniest part about this whole thing is I watched this crap break. All right? While I was, while we were amidst the break from that one given week, I was up at the time that all the bull crap started. And I watched that happen. I'm like, holy crap. And my instinct, like, the next morning is to text Alex and go, dude, look at this kind of thing. So I was there for a lot of it. But as far as, like, actual timeline of how things happened later after that initial burst is where I get a little lost. But without further ado, let's try and explain this because we have a lot to explain. Starting on early May 2019, May 8th to be exact. ProJared, for those who don't know, first of all, is a gaming YouTuber that originally, and I'm going to correct a lot of the stories out there because this was not his start. A lot of people want to credit ProJared's start and why a lot of people know him for his position working for Screw Attack, hosting Hard News. He is not the person that started Hard News.
But he got a start there, didn't he?
He did not, actually. His start, I believe, was associated with Screw Attack, but it was with a show called Name Tags. It's basically supposed to be like a sitcom, but in a game store. That is where ProJared started because his term from that was Professional Jared. Because Screw Attack had this weird way of being able to introduce people, so their boss of the office was Stuttering Craig. You had Nervous Nick, you had Jose El Mexicano, you had... You kind of get the point here, guys. There was a lot of really weird names for the personalities on there, and Jared's was Professional Jared. The person who actually started up Hard News was Destin Legary, who now works at IGN, otherwise known as Daily Destin. This is how I know that, because I watched him and think his work is better than Jared's on Hard News. Just saying. Fast forward a little bit. ProJared gets fired, starts up a YouTube channel. He actually gets fired because he started the YouTube channel, and he wanted to put more work into that than he did at Screw Attack. And I've got statements from Stuttering Craig that say that. He got fired because he invested way too much time into his YouTube channel. He's been going for a couple of years, and eventually marries Heidi. Heidi is a cosplayer, and a hot cosplayer, as a lot of people on Twitter have been wanting to point out. I'm not arguing that. She is pretty hot.
Yeah. And as an added detail, in addition to being a known cosplayer, she also owns the apparel company Forest Girl Clothing.
She does. Now, fast forward. They've been moving along in marriage and having a happy old time, at least that's what we were aware of, until May 8th, 2019, when ProJared releases a statement on his Twitter that they are getting divorced. I'm not going to read the statement, obviously, because it's pretty lengthy, but he announces that they're getting divorced after much couples counseling, after much individual therapy, and also a notable YouTube absence, which we're presuming was because he was going through said counseling. After a long, lengthy process, they have decided to divorce. I'm not even kidding, literally minutes after this tweet went up, his wife goes on the mother of all, or ex-wife, I guess at this point, would be mother of all tirades. Literally 12 to 14 tweets correcting everything about that statement and going very in-depth into their relationship and revealing quite a bit about Jared.
Well,
and all of this was based on the fact that he blocked her right after he released the statement.
Actually, to clarify, looking at the timestamps, it's not that he blocked her after, but rather that he blocked her account before posting the statement.
Okay, well, that's something I didn't know.
And that was kind of what set this whole thing off, was that he blocked her account before posting the statement, and then after people were then bringing up the fact that the statement had been made, that was where this started, was the blocking before making the statement and making it look like a joint statement, thus unleashing, well,
the
Hurricane Heidi.
Yes, pretty much. And let's just go into all of the stuff that she basically alluded to. Jared put her through hell, put her through psychological and physical, well, more mental abuse, but I guess there is some physical abuse in there somewhere. Pro Jared was cheating on her for quite a while with Holly Conrad. That name might sound familiar to some people, as this has been covered by numerous YouTube channels. Holly Conrad is also a YouTuber by the name of Commander Holly, who, up until this point, was at least for a year, ex-wife of Ross from the Game Grumps. All right, they had separated in August of 2018. In what looked to be amicable circumstances. Basically, they didn't agree on where they wanted to live. Ross wanted to live in the city. She wanted to move out of California. But now we're finding out that Jared and Holly had been having a months-long relationship, one of which that Heidi asked for them to stop, but they continued. And not only that, but Jared was, well, not shy about his body, and decided to share his body with everyone on the internet. This usually goes well for people, correct?
Depending on who you ask and what they're into.
I can come up with a couple of examples where it isn't. But basically, a slew of dick pics. I wish I didn't have to say that. But dick pics of Jared, with him in the picture, by the way, were unleashed into the internet from a phone that Heidi had. Plus, the other problem here is that he was actually requesting and sending nudes to his viewers. Keep in mind, people, that a lot of his viewers are in the demographic of teenagers.
Yep, specifically under the age of 18, which, no matter what state you're in, under U.S. law, that is a major no-no.
Oh, and the generalities of some of the other complaints that have happened since then have all been under the age of 16.
Which is an even bigger no-no.
Yes, he was sending nudes and receiving nudes from people or kids as old as 16 and as young, the last I checked of all the accusations, as young as 13. And yeah, so that crap was happening. And while that deluge happened, a record was broken in our absence. I kind of wished I'd been there to cover it. But in one day, a man lost 100,000 subscribers. And then was promptly beat by another YouTuber who lost more than that.
Yeah, and that's a whole...
We're not getting into that, people. It's too big.
That's beyond our purview as three, randos on the internet.
I mean, we did the Why We Geek episode with Shay, and Shay could cover it. All right? But, yeah. I'm not even touching that. It's so big at this point. And it's a whole, it's something we definitely need to bring Shay on to give details on, because I just can't cover it all. But let's fast forward a little bit. After all of this happens, Jared loses the 100,000 subscribers on his main channel, and I think it was up to 30,000 on his Let's Play channel. Pro Jared Plays. Then, I want to say about a week later, and this is where it gets a little fuzzy for me, is that Jared, after all this crap happened, releases another statement. In that statement, he basically... Well, and actually, I should cover this stuff too, because Pro Jared was also part of another organization, an MCN, if you will, on YouTube called Normal Boots. He was partners there with people like JonTron for a while, Peanut Butter Gamer, Gerard the Completionist, and many others. After the deluge of dick pics, Normal Boots decided, after getting a complaint about him, to part ways with Pro Jared. And also, the funniest part about this whole thing is the Pro Jared Reddit, or subreddit, which he was a moderator on. Jared got kicked off, and now it's gone to hell. He's no longer a moderator of it, and now it's basically a place to go and look up Pro Jared memes. Most of which involve that really creepy picture of him in Sailor Mercury's outfit.
Yeah, but...
I'm not going to put that up, people. I appreciate you way too much.
Yeah, we don't want to mentally scar you. At
Yeah.
least not this way. I mean, if we really want to mentally scar you, we're gonna actually put some effort into it.
Yes. So, fast forward again, we have Pro Jared releasing a statement just after that, or I want to say about a week after that, things like that, amongst other responses. But he releases a statement saying his side of the argument, roughly, which is simply that apparently Heidi encouraged them to be in what is called a polyamorous relationship. For those who don't know what that is, Romney explained. I'm going to be too busy hitting my head against a wall.
All right. Well, to clarify the statement, Jared's statement explained that both he and Heidi agreed to be in an open polyamorous marriage. What polyamory is, to simplify in layman's terms, that's basically where you are not committed to solely one romantic partner, and you're basically allowed to basically date and sleep with other people. And for some people, they can make it work so long as the people in this type of relationship are honest with each other. But that'll be kind of something I'll discuss later on. But that is what polyamory is. Is the idea is that you can have multiple romantic relationships with multiple people, and that you're not specifically committed to one person alone. And there's a huge debate on whether or not that's a thing.
Oh, there's a
biologically,
debate now on
psychologically.
YouTube on it. Yeah.
Well, not even just a debate like just on YouTube because of this incident. It's been a long running debate about whether or not some people arguing that polyamory should be treated akin to other sexual orientations. Some people believing that it's more of a moral choice or a philosophical choice. That's something that could be a whole separate podcast in and of itself, and probably is, and probably with much more qualified experts explaining it. But that is what polyamory is in the most extreme, most simplest way I could put it.
Exactly. So, that being explained, Heidi apparently encouraged Jared to reach out to Holly and tell her his feelings for her, because Heidi knew that he had feelings for Holly, which started up their relationship. Heidi apparently had a long distance relationship with another guy, according to Jared's statement. And also according to statements from Holly, because Holly has also come out. After a while, things started getting really serious between Jared and Holly, and Heidi apparently then asked them to call it off. And the way the polyamory works is that when your partner says no more, you're supposed to stop. Otherwise, then at that point, it's cheating. Except Jared and Holly didn't stop there. That's when she said no, and they continued on for a few more months after that point.
Yep. But the plot does thicken, as in a later statement response to Pro Jared's statement, which, although it presented the details about their polyamorous relationship, did not address the whole, soliciting nudes from underage fans. Yeah. Heidi admitted that she and Jared did attempt a polyamorous relationship, a fact that probably she should have been more forthcoming about, and naturally threw a lot of her statements into question and basically increased the level of scrutiny. In the case of, oh, hey, why didn't you, open with this and were honest about this from the get-go? Why did you keep this hidden?
Especially since she went out of her way in the, like I said, 14 to 15 tweets at the time when she unleashed her wrath upon Twitter. She was very upfront on a lot of the actions that she was stating against Jared as well as herself. And so at that point, a lot of people expected that. And when Heidi came out slowly after that, that's when things got called into question.
Yep.
Like I said, Holly has also made statements known. They are pretty much confirmed Jared's statements that this did happen. The polyamory was a thing. But Heidi had already admitted to such.
Yeah, but wait, there's more!
Oh, God, no.
Yes, there is, and now for this, I'm specifically going off of what was uncovered thanks in large part to that gamer from Mars, who has pretty much compiled a full-on summary of what has been going on with Pro Jared, where in the wake of Heidi's statement in response to Pro Jared's statement, Holly and basically what's resulted has been a three-way flame war between Jared, Heidi, and Holly, revealing that Heidi had intentions of destroying Pro Jared's career in preparation for, basically, to put simply, this Twitter barrage was premeditated, as there were messages and comments that were then presented by Holly showing that she was ready to basically flip the switch and torpedo ProJared's credibility and was just waiting for the right moment. Now, again, some of it is questionable, but that is what Holly has since presented in the wake of it, in the midst of other very intimate personal details about the three of them, in a bid to one-up each other about who is the most awful person of the three. And so the plot has gotten even thicker in the case of now you can't even necessarily trust what Heidi has said at this point, because it's gone from a case of there being a clear victim to these three people just being awful human beings.
And we also do know that some of the tweets and the nude pics were acquired by some authority figures, federal authority figures. And I can't remember what site actually said this, but there is some kind of a minor investigation going into ProJared from the Fed side. I can't remember off the top of my head what site confirmed this, but somebody basically reached out to the feds and asked, do you guys have this information and such. Since Romney and I have been talking quite a bit on this situation, and now we have to give our opinions on this. Alex, for the first time in at least a while, you get the floor. Have your way with it. Oh, that was really bad. Never mind. I apologize.
Jeez. I don't think I have much to say on this. It's I didn't actually know about some of the more recent stuff until Romney mentioned it.
Neither did I.
I knew about the cheating, and then I heard about the polyamorous thing. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I guess it is. So whatever, you're a consultant adult, so you do what you want. But yeah, now it really does sound like three terrible people being terrible to each other.
Yeah.
And you know what? Y'all kind of get what you deserve in the end.
Pretty much. Romney, any thoughts you want to add?
Well, and this is something I mentioned with my therapist, and I feel comfortable saying it here, but I just have to say this in regards not just with the ProJared situation, but with a bunch of the news stories we've had to cover. Why can't people just keep it in their pants? I mean, come on. Why is that such a hard?
You'd think it would be the easiest thing to do, but apparently not.
Yeah, apparently not. Apparently it's just people just can't keep it in their pants. Because we've covered so many stories about, with sexual harassment allegations and cheating and all this stuff, and I'm just like, people, have some goddamn self-control. It's not that hard. You can, if you work at it, you can, control yourself and make sure you're not, being an awful person, but that's just all I was to say. Why can't people just keep it in their pants?
In light of this joke now, I'm probably just going to pull my wife aside when one of these guys comes over to record, and I'm just going to be like, but it's been like 2 minutes since we've had sex. Because that's apparently how married couples act, right? I'm sorry, how married couples on YouTube act, right?
There's so many directions that could go. We should probably steer the Jeep back before you go off the cliff.
Let me bring things back a little bit. So there's a story that I'm not really going to cover here because it's kind of resolved itself. This is one of the other listener suggestions that we got, which involved the recent divorce hearings with one Jim Cummings. If you don't know who Jim Cummings is, he is the voice of Winnie the Pooh, as well as a lot of other Disney voices. If you're a fan of the Clone Wars or Rebel series, he played Hondo Ohnaka in them. Jim Cummings is very well known in the voice acting circles. Had a lot of prominent jobs in there, and he was in the middle of a very heated divorce with his wife, which was basically like Chris Hardwick all over again. Except, with Chris Hardwick and his girlfriend and the accusations, it was just the two of them. With Jim Cummings, however, there was 2 daughters to consider. And so, I'm going to give the exact same advice that I would give to Jim Cummings right here and now to Jared and Heidi. Keep your divorce shit to yourselves. Sorry if that was loud for people. But the bottom line is that as far as I am concerned, the additional information from Romney is helpful, but to me kind of irrelevant simply because this is people dragging their divorce bullshit into a public space, and lawyers, experienced divorce lawyers, would tell you, don't, and by experience, I mean sane ones, would tell you not to do this because it never ends well.
Nope. I mean, this kind of crap that we're seeing, I'm just like, okay, when I'm checking Twitter, I'm wanting to check it for just like news stuff, some funny tweets. I didn't sign up for the digital equivalent of the Maury Povich show.
Speaking as a kid who went through a knockdown, drag out, 2 to 3 year long divorce, as a kid, not being married, being the kid in the crossfire to my parents, you don't reveal that crap. Because nobody truly understands the situation. Ever. Because always you're getting one side, another side, or in my case, my side, where you're in the middle and you don't necessarily know everything because you're too young.
Yep. I think there's a quote from Lord of the Rings that kind of summarizes it perfectly from Fellowship, where Gandalf basically says, even the wise do not know all things.
Yes. And so at that point, that's what this is as far as I am concerned. Heidi may have been mentally abused. So may have Jared. But the bottom line is that you drag that out into the public sphere, and now all of us don't want anything to do with either of you.
Yeah, I think this is basically a good example of what we would call mutually assured destruction.
It really is. It really is, because given your information, Romney, if Heidi intended to destroy Jared, and Jared also, through some of his actions, intended to destroy Heidi, that's what this is. They are literally just looking for... They're going to scorched earth everybody else around them. As long as they get the other, then they're okay with it. Kind of thing. And the bottom line is that unfortunately, now you have these consequences going at you. I'm going to go ahead and say this right here, right now. I think the panel is going to agree with me. Jared, your career is dust. Have fun going back to Wisconsin. That's where he's from. Heidi, have fun in Oregon. You're going to be able to go to cons and cosplay, but you're not going to get any spotlight out of it. And any spotlight you get, this crap is going to keep getting brought up to you. Also, Holly, sorry, have to bring you into this as well. Your YouTube career's done as far as I'm concerned. Poor Ross.
Yeah, but at least Ross is being mature about it and basically saying, hey, I don't want to comment on it, so I'm just going to stay out of it.
No, and you know what? He is the sane one amongst all of this. He's saying, please leave me out of it. Because I didn't even know this. So other people know from our other channels we're fans of the Game Grumps. I haven't really been watching the live streams, but apparently somebody was bringing to my attention, in light of the Jared situation, Ross has been coming on to a lot of those streams really drunk and really depressed. And it seems to be kind of an ongoing... I think he's getting better now, but he was not in a good place for a long time there. And it was probably because of the divorce with Holly. And some people are also guessing whether or not he knew about the polyamory happening. And probably wasn't okay with it. Again, Ross is not making any statements, and frankly, he shouldn't.
Yeah.
On this
one. One person that I should also kind of shout out here as well, Peanut Butter Gamer, when Heidi kind of, for lack of a better term, although I wouldn't say she threw the first punch, but when she escalated the whole situation, Peanut Butter Gamer kind of sent a reply, which a lot of people yelled at him out for, saying, this ain't it, Chief. And that was his way of saying, hey, there's more to the story than what she is telling you. And naturally, things kind of exploded in his case. But at the end of the day, and after all this, we're just like, Peanut Butter Gamer, you were right. You were right there. This wasn't it, Chief. We should have listened to you, man. We're sorry.
You're right. But at the same time, I also agree with Peanut Butter Gamer in his response after getting pelted the first time. Because the bottom line is that, again, he got involved in the divorce proceedings, whether he was willing or whether he was aware of it or not. And as soon as all that crap happened, he backed the F off. And that's what you need to do.
Yep. Although
you'll notice none of the other normal Boots people, aside from formal statements, they didn't say shit during any of this. And that's exactly what you should have done. everybody's just like, you know what? I'm just gonna go over to that lawn chair and enjoy the scenery.
Yeah, this does raise an interesting question over kind of what online video will do for the nature of relationships going forward, considering we're having generations of children growing up with social media kind of being an omnipresent thing. Are we starting, and this is just me kind of speculating here, we might be getting to the point where if we have people with YouTube channels, are we going to have like people including details about the YouTube channels and prenup agreements or divorce proceedings, stuff like that? I mean,
This
we've
is
already
stuff
seen
that we've already speculated on years ago when
Yeah.
somebody basically lost their YouTube channel because it was won in a divorce settlement.
Yeah, there was like the divorce settlement. There was the stuff that went on with Pervert Pete, where a judge basically ordered him to stop making YouTube videos because, again, part of the divorce proceeding where his wife basically painted a picture that wasn't true. It's an ugly time we are starting to enter,
Yes.
and I think pretty much like you've said, we, as tempting as it may be to drag a lot of this stuff out into the sunlight, and again, I understand that if there is like legitimate abuse, if there is like an actual like wrongdoing that needs to be called out, I understand the desire and need to call it out and to drag it out into the sunlight. But again, make sure that it's kind of a case of don't resort to being petty about it. If it's something that is legitimately wrongdoing, like if Heidi had stopped at the cheating and the soliciting nudes, if she was more forthcoming about the polyamorous relationship and was more honest about it instead of trying to frame the narrative.
Well, I'm gonna kind of stop you there because I actually kind of want to go into that really quick too. Okay, polyamorous relationships. I know that a lot of people think that those are the greatest things ever and that a lot of success happens with them, but I'm just going to go ahead and give a little bit of experience from other friends that I know of that have had similar experiences to these. And they were whether they were aware of them or not, they were polyamory, where it was basically trying to get consent to cheat. Don't. Just don't. All occurrences that I've ever... this is my personal advice. You can have your own opinion out there, chat. But all occurrences that I've known of polyamory trying to happen, they never end well. And sometimes kids get involved. And the kids get brought up basically as... they're not even people anymore, they're assets in these divorce proceedings. There's no way any of the parents are even considering them people at that point. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right here now, if you're considering whether or not to go into a relationship like that, think about it really, really hard. A lot harder than you're thinking about it right now. Because consequences will happen if it doesn't work out.
Yep. To that, I would add this. If you're thinking about going into a polyamorous relationship, or you're thinking about broaching the topic with your partner, before you take that step, try to see if there's maybe some need in your relationship that isn't being fulfilled with your current partner.
Well, bringing it up alone can violate trust in a relationship.
Yeah, not just that. It could even be a case of, okay, there's clear... like, what I see is that the desire to engage in a polyamorous relationship, especially in cases where trust and honesty, it's usually systemic of a deeper rooted problem in the relationship. Yes. So before you decide to pursue the route of polyamory, maybe try to see if there's an underlying issue with the relationship that needs to be addressed.
Better to pay the hundreds to the counselor instead of the thousands to lawyers.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't even need to be with a counselor. You just need to actually sit down with your partner and discuss if there's something that's been bothering you, something from the past, something that they're currently doing, or something that you feel is missing. Talk to them. Try to be open and honest with them. Make sure that you're both actually communicating with each other, because that's what causes not just relationships like polyamory or thruples or any of those other weird relationships. That's just what causes any relationship to break down, is when there's no communication, when there's no trust, when there's no honesty, when you're feeling you're having to go behind each other's back. That's a problem.
Absolutely.
And so the sooner you address it, the sooner you try to actually fix it the right way by addressing the underlying problem that is leading you to think polyamory might be a thing, the better off you'll be. And if it means that maybe you and your partner break up, well, that might just be for the best. It could just be, hey, maybe instead of trying to maintain a failing relationship while also getting some on the side, discuss the issue with the partner. And if it's just a case where it's not working, well, then that's the way life is. At least you'll have an understanding of what went wrong.
Pretty much. Now I'm going to go ahead and wrap the story up here because we do have other things to get into, and we're already like 30, 40 minutes in. So we have crap to get to tonight, and the next thing is yet another update that we have to get into. So I think we've pretty much hit the nail on the head. Both are, as far as I'm concerned, this triangle is done. Their YouTube careers, all of it. It's done.
Tune in for more relationship advice from Draken Romney.
Pretty much. Now, the next one I couldn't necessarily grab all of the stories for, but it is an update in the Vic Mignogna case. Specifically, 2 updates that happened while we were gone. The first one is fairly straightforward, so I'm just going to go ahead and get into this. Obviously, when a lawsuit happens, people get served. Jamie Markey, a voice actor at Funimation, was also part of the lawsuit with Vic Mignogna, Ron Toye, Monica Rial, and Funimation, and was basically dodging the process server. Okay? I know that sometimes we see on TV that that's a good idea. It's really not. And in turn, you're going to get notified of the fact that you have a lawsuit. You are going to get served whether you like it or not. And so there was a lot of points where we have testimony from the process server that was trying to serve her house, or serve her at her house. Poor guy. He had to sit there for 5 days straight watching her house, knowing that somebody was in the house, probably Jamie, although there's some speculation as to whether or not it was somebody living with Jamie. I don't know. Basically, he had to watch it and keep knocking on the door so that he could serve Jamie Markey. All the while, she decided to raise the stink on Twitter and basically make it look like she's running from the law. So she changed her title to being Jamie Markey, running from the law, things like that, and saying how she was being undercover while in a coffee shop and they'll never find me here. All you do in that process, people, is piss people off. So much so that what happened next is that a amended order happened that the process server didn't necessarily need to serve Jamie in person. All he had to do was plop it on her door. And he did. And she has thus been served. And we actually do have the response officially from her lawyer. So she has been served. Her lawyer is there. She's made his arguments. They're going to court. There's really not much to update there. Any thoughts you guys want to add before I get into the next bit?
Not really. I mean, that's a sad reality for a lot of people who have to serve this paperwork for the court. I mean, there are a lot of stories of lawyers having disguised themselves as pizza delivery guys, as taxi drivers, because when it comes to things like either subpoenas, restraining orders, various other orders, people will go above and beyond to try to avoid getting those orders. There was, to kind of share a personal story, there was back when I did Taekwondo, one of the students in my class was dealing with an abusive ex-husband and was actually living with the Taekwondo instructors that I was studying under at the time. And they were kind of explaining, although the amount of detail they gave, I kind of tilt my head at thinking, are you sure you really should be sharing this? But
yeah,
it was a case where they talked about how the lengths that the person processing and actually going to serve the paperwork and the lengths some of the people have to go in order to serve restraining orders, because people who are, controlling abusive assholes will try to do anything to make sure that they continue being controlling abusive assholes. And in this case, he had the rights, the title to the house and all of the other stuff so that the person fleeing from him couldn't go back home, couldn't live in her own home. And that was the point of the restraining order, so that she could actually, take her kids and actually live in their own home, god damn it. So it's not uncommon. It sucks. It's kind of ridiculous that these are the lengths that people have to go to, but that's the side of the legal system that you don't get to see. I mean, it happens so much that they even made a parody of it in an Iron Man comic where a woman now the context is that a woman pretends to be kind of like nearly drunk, needing a ride home. Tony Stark gives her a lift, and then at the end she hands the paperwork and says, like, Tony Stark, you've been served. That's how prevalent this sort of thing is, that even Iron Man has to deal with it.
Well, the other thing that I want to bring up here is that Jamie Markey might have thought that she was being really snarky, doing all this stuff and staying undercover and putting out the nasty, or not nasty, but the sarcastic tweets about it. But think about that from a court perspective. What image are you giving when you do that kind of behavior to the judge who's about to face your case? You're not giving a good one. In fact, you're basically giving an image that you're not going to cooperate at all. And so at that point, that's when these kinds of measures, like Jamie just basically getting served at her door and the picture being put up on the internet and all that, that's what happens when you do stuff like that. Okay, so you've already hurt. So whether or not, let's not get into the argument of whether or not Jamie Markey had a good case or not. She doesn't. She already has a big black mark on it now because of her actions trying to avoid the processor. So that's definitely something that has to be considered. Alex, do you want to add anything to this before we move on to the next part of it?
Yeah, it's weird because it's like, for no apparent reason, like days ago, I was like wondering, is this really a thing? Because I always keep thinking back to the movie The Fan with Robert De Niro, where he gets served divorce papers, but because the server says, "Hey, your car's getting towed," and just to hand him the divorce papers. Mm-hmm. So I was like, for whatever reason, that scene just popped into my head like days ago, and I was like wondering, is that a real thing or is that just like a movie trope thing that never really
in
happens?
Divorce
I guess
proceedings,
it's a real
it can
thing.
be. In divorce proceedings, it
Like,
can be, because judges will literally take your inaction as you don't care that she's taking half your stuff.
Yeah, that's so surprising to me that people would try and go out of their way to dodge service papers.
Yeah.
Or that people could do that at all, period.
I agree.
You'd think some way or somehow they'd get to you.
Agree, especially considering that what I've seen, I don't really have experience with process servers, only lawyer stories about them, but they go above and beyond. Like, you guys think that the post office follows that whole whether sleet or snow or rain or shine? Like, no. Because I know postal workers don't follow that. They know who they are. But process servers, they have to. That's the court telling them to do it. That's their job. Mm-hmm. Kind of deal. So, moving on into the next portion of this, we've technically officially had our first hearing in the Vic Mignogna trial. The hearing is kind of silly, but let me explain how we got to this point. After Ronica... wow, I was about to do the whole Ronica thing. What?
Hold the thought. By chance, do you have like a link to a transcription of this? Because I couldn't find one.
To the hearing itself? No.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I can get you links in a little bit for the official... Like, I can get you something for the reply from Jamie's lawyer, but not the hearing itself. I've only got testimony from people who were there.
All right.
So, with that being said... actually, I don't have the links off the top of my head, but Kiwi Farms, I think, does. Of all of the stuff that I'm about to cover, the motions to quash and stuff like that. But let me cover it quick. So now that Ron and Monica's lawyer, Casey Eric, has been brought into the situation, and Ty Beard, who is Vic's lawyer, has been brought in, or they've met each other, they were actually in the process of determining depositions. So that we're in the process of what's called discovery. Basically, all documents, any kind of depositions that they can get, testimony, all that stuff. This is where that's happening. And they were already trying to set up a date for Vic, as well as Monica and Ron, to come in and do their depositions. Now, for people who don't know how depositions work, it's not Law and Order, people. You aren't immediately brought into the court. In some cases, you're brought to the... to your lawyer's law firm, and you're interrogated roughly for about 6 hours on any question that they want to ask you.
If you've ever seen The Social Network, that's pretty much a whole movie surrounding
that actually is a perfect example. That's a deposition right there. Or if you've been following the Meyer versus Wade stuff, depositions are out for that. Official transcripts of those are available. So that's how that process goes, and they were getting ready to set that up. Now, Monica and Ron's attorney, Casey, and I'm just going to refer to the attorneys, otherwise this gets really complicated. Casey was getting to Ty and asking, or basically demanding, that Vic be put into a deposition first. All right? Before his clients were ever going to have their deposition, Vic should have his on this particular date, and it was in the middle. Actually, no, it was May 30th. It was going to be at the end of May, and he was insisting that Vic be deposed first. Now, there's technically no law in Texas where they're doing this trial that a plaintiff or a defendant should be deposed first. And so at that point, Ty and Casey were working out the details, and Ty had a very basic concern. The concern being is that as soon as Vic gets his deposition, Casey could then put in a motion for basically an anti-slap motion to have kind of a summary judgment and have discovery halted for 90 days. So at that point, Vic gets deposed, but Ron and Monica don't get deposed for 90 days. Like, nothing can happen there. And at that point, depositions are also filmed, and it's public record, unless you have a confidentiality order saying that it's not. And you can just put out clips or whatever you want to do as a tactic to be able to continue to push your case for the next 90 days. Ty didn't obviously like that and was pushing for, okay, if you want to be able to depose Vic first, we'll do that as long as you're willing to sign a confidentiality order or some kind of a gentleman's agreement saying that you won't do this anti-slap motion, that we won't have the 90 days of no discovery, or that at some point we'll be able to still be able to depose Monica and Ron Toye. Okay? This eventually led into a court battle where motions to quash were put in, where Casey was accusing Ty of not being cooperative, Ty was accusing Casey of not being cooperative, and they had to go to court to figure out the depositions. This is where we get to the actual depositions. The results of that are pretty minor. At this point, all that really happened was that the depositions are happening. They're, instead of happening at the law firm offices, the court or the judge basically did what I like to call a dad moment, and pulled the two lawyers aside and conked them on the head and said, okay, well, now we're going to cooperate by my rules. And so now they're all going to be deposed in the courthouse on specific days, and I believe they're all within the same week. But they're all going to get their depositions, and it's all going to be done in the courthouse, and from here on, instead of having to deal with each other's law firms, everything is just going to be dealt with via the court, as it looks like this is the level of mediation that's going to need to happen. So, again, it's one of those things where I really wish I had documentation of the hearing itself, or at least like a court reporter transcribe that happened. I do not, but I can get you the. In fact, I'll even put a link in the RSS feed to the motions to quash from both Ty as well as Casey in this regard, so you can see the emails that they were having between each other, kind of arguing back and forth about whether or not Vic gets deposed first. That being said, anything you guys want to add to that one? I really wish I could tell you this was a prominent moment in the Vic trial. It's not. It's lawyer squabbling that will happen in any kind of trial.
Yeah, there's not really much else to comment on since, again, they're in the process of discovery. This is basically where they're gathering the evidence for their respective cases. As such, the process of discovery will take a long while, and that's the honest truth of it. It won't be... my prediction, even if things move at a very quick pace, we probably won't really hear anything major until, I'd say, November at the earliest.
Okay. Yeah, the best estimate that I've been able to get is the better part of this year. So at that point, these depositions as well as the discovery process might take until the end of the year to be able to finish up, and then we can actually have like a trial or hopefully a settlement by that point, because I can only imagine how much money will have been spent.
Yep.
At that
point. As I've stated before, lawsuits are financial wars of attrition. It's very much a case of you drag it out as long as possible until the other side gives in.
Mm-hmm. I still remember for another podcast that I do where I was watching the Chris Amon CM Punk trial and just seeing the pure war of attrition that was, especially considering that Chris Amon, who was a doctor for World Wrestling Entertainment, was, for lack of a better term, and there's no confirmation to this, but yeah, he was receiving funds from WWE to keep the lawsuit going. Kind of thing, just to see if they could maybe drain CM Punk. So
Yeah.
like that's the crap that happens with these kinds of trials, especially civil lawsuits in general. I think even Meyer versus Wade has gone through this to some extent.
Yeah, like the numbers of lawsuits. I mean, an example of a case where the financial war of attrition was taken to the nth degree was the lawsuit between the creators of Cyber 6, an Argentinian comic series, and James Cameron because of the similarities that the show Dark Angel had with Cyber 6. But over time, James Cameron, having, more money because he's the guy who made Terminator and Titanic,
Yeah.
was basically just able to wait them out, that the creators of Cyber 6 just couldn't keep the lawsuit going, so they had to drop it.
Oh, dude, and somebody actually just barely brought this up to me. Hulk Hogan versus Gawker. That's another example there where Gawker lost the war of attrition and ran out of money before that trial could end, and I believe it ended in a settlement in Hulk Hogan's favor. I forgot about that one.
Yep.
And that's why Gawker isn't a thing anymore.
Yep, this is the nitty-gritty of lawsuits. That's not like what we see on television or in movies where it's like, oh, all of this happens quickly. No, what they forget is that shows like Law and Order and movies like Legally Blonde,
Yeah.
they bypass a lot of the red tape stuff because that stuff's, kind of boring and takes a long time, and so that's why movies and television, they basically put fast forward on the whole process.
Well, not only that, but like I love the fact that even now, like all the way up from when the accusations were happening in January up until now, there are still some people online that think that this is just going to be like any other episode of Law and Order that they've watched. It's not. First of all, you have the difference between criminal trial and civil trial. All right, civil court handles differently than criminal court. And on top of that, the process is different, and everything is condensed in a Law & Order episode so you can get to the heated moments. It's not that way in in real trials. They take years.
Yep, and to add to that, it also doesn't work the way you think it does in shows like Judge Judy. Because again, those are small claims cases that can be settled rather quickly.
Yeah.
But even then, in non-televised court situations, even small claims suits can take a really long time.
Especially when you're considering the lawyers that are at work here. I mean, I haven't been able to look too much into Casey Eric, but I have been able to look into his law firm. They're a Dallas law firm, which means they're handling a lot of corporate stuff as well as these civil cases. Beard Harris Bullock and Hughes has also had that kind of a record as well. These are two law firms that are ready for long hauls. It's just whether or not your client can pay up.
Yep. Or if the target has enough money to go after that basically makes the wait worth it. Which then, even if a judge rules in your favor in a civil suit, there's nothing that physically forces someone to pay in a civil suit. It's a case of, okay, you're being ordered to pay this person money. It's like, okay, doesn't mean I have to pay right away. For if someone wanted to, I could pay a penny a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem. That's why you have legal finance operations popping up everywhere. It's like, oh yeah, you need money to get you through until the person you sued is willing to pay up. Here, take out this loan. And that's the other factor of civil suits no one ever thinks of, is that just because they're ruled in a certain favor doesn't mean they have to pay you right away. They can take as long as they want. They can drag their heels, and often people do drag their heels.
Alex, what's your take from all this stuff? Like, I mean, I wish I could tell you that this was an impactful hearing, but it really wasn't.
No, that's why I was a little surprised we're covering it, because we're still, as early as we were when we last covered the story.
Yeah.
It's the lawsuit process. It takes a while. Romney mentioned Judge Judy, which, to be a little bit clear there, Judge Judy and those shows, those are arbitration courts. They're not like a traditional civil or criminal court.
Yeah.
Arbitration works differently in this case. So those are essentially, I don't know if they're I can't remember, they're totally prearranged, but both participants actually get paid by the network to participate.
I'm not sure about
Judy,
but there are ones that are pre-generated based off of other cases.
Yeah, and there's some that just go the straight up reality show angle. I don't remember the name of the show. I think it was called Extreme Justice because the nickname of the judge was Extreme Akeem, and he did like these weird sentences that it was pretty much court TV given the reality show treatment of like challenges being issued as these sentences. And Yeah. It's all fake, people. Television is all fake.
As to your question, Alex, as to why we're covering it, simply because listeners asked for it, and so at that point, I am delivering in this regard. But guys, I'm also here to tell you one simple process. I'm not covering deposition. I'm not covering. Basically, the next time you're going to hear about this, unless you're listening to Nick Ricada or all of the other people covering it, the next time you hear from it on this podcast is either going to be announcement of a settlement or actually going to trial. Kind of thing.
Yeah, or if some like grand revelation of information actually comes to light.
Yeah, that too.
Mm-hmm.
But it
we're not
would take like okay, this is what it would take, people. Dick pics of Vic are immediately brought out to the internet.
Vic pics.
Vic pics, yes. Sorry.
Vic pics.
Damn it. Damn it. I may have just given ammunition for this war to go on another couple of months. And I didn't mean to. I think we may have found the episode title on the RSS feed. So, with that being said, let's actually get into some recent news, shall we, people? We've covered a lot of depressing stuff, but we're only going to get into more depressing stuff. Alex, you actually found this story. I was aware of it, but I believe you're the one that's actually read it all the way through. I had to stop, otherwise I would punch a hole in a wall. But we have one of our more recent stories tonight. If it was going to be a top story, it'd probably be now. It would be on this story from CNET that has been part of the huge controversy that's been happening this week. And I'm going to go ahead and just read the title because it tells you everything that you need to know about this story. And Alex, if you have no problem, you can get into the details here. Meet the angry gaming YouTubers who turn outrage into views.
Yeah. There's nothing to say here. It's overly long think piece by overly compensating journalist, quote unquote, to once again, because YouTube is in the headlines for whatever stupid reason that people are upset about. Recently, it's been the case of Vox versus Steven Crowder. And so now CNET is deciding to probably capitalize on it, jump on it. Okay, to be a little bit
By the
fair,
way,
I'm sure
happy Pride Month!
Yeah. I'm sure this was a few weeks in the works because obviously there was a lot of people just talked to and interviewed. But
oh, yeah.
I get so goddamn tired of these dumb stories that these weird think pieces come out of nowhere. It's like that always have to be like, why are YouTubers so angry? Why are internet trolls so mean? Why are, especially this today, just I was like, to this article writer Ian Shear or whatever your name is, I guess, like, have you never turned on cable news recently or ever? And
unfortunately,
I don't get.
Ian Shear has a record here of doing this kind of stuff.
Oh, big surprise! It's just like you can turn. This is not a phenomenon unique to YouTube. This is not unique to the digital scape here. This has been going on in cable news for a long ass time. I have no idea how long. Probably more than a decade. Probably since the invention of cable news.
Hell, network news in the '90s when Mortal Kombat was a thing.
I'll do you all one better. This has been going on since print media. Again, lest we forget, a person by the name of William Randolph Hearst.
Right. It's just turn on Fox News or turn on MSNBC and turn on CNN. You'll see about 20 talking heads for 30 hours a night screaming about each other. If you're watching Fox, they're screaming, why are the liberals so bad? If it's MSNBC, why are the conservatives so bad? If it's CNN, I don't know what CNN talks about. But...
CNN talked about
yeah. It's almost like we live in an outrage culture or something.
Something like that. But I want to point this out really quick. I know we don't usually do this that often. Go into what our thoughts are in the when we're explaining the stories to each other before they actually hit the podcast. But I think Alex explained it to a T. In fact, I would add on it when he basically said, I'm not sure if we want to cover this, but because it's basically, and I quote, a thinly veiled hit piece. I'm going to add on to your deal, even though I know that this is going to kind of cover what you were trying to say. Thinly veiled, thinly written, thinly attacked, thinly argued, thinly informed. It is a bad article. Ian, sure, I know people who could outright you without trying.
I guess you really are sure about that. But
I am, in fact. And for that, you're going to get the but-umts when I actually edit this. The other thing that also is very thinly veiled on this is that this article, as far as I am concerned, this is why I had to drop it, is basically an excuse to his editor because he found, 3 to 4 YouTubers that he just wanted to attack. And so he brings them up here. We have Clean Prince Gaming. We have Legacy Killa HD. We have Jeremy Hamley from The Quartering. Why not? And, of course, Angry Joe.
And he also takes a swipe at Jim Sterling.
And Jim Sterling. But all of basically what he's saying in this entire article is, and I think its steps kind of set things up properly to explain the rest of the article. Step 1, find something to be angry about. Go to online forums, track what's hot on Twitter, and figure out the outrage of the day. Step 2, rant into a camera for 10 minutes. 3, profit.
You're like slipping into 90s kid right there.
A little bit. That's because that's what this is. Actually, shouldn't that be step 4, profit? Step 3 should be... I'm actually going to let that silence run on the podcast.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so this was just a thinly veiled attempt to just hit on content creators this guy didn't like. Okay, and I know that some people, along with Alex on one of our Let's Plays, a lot of people have made the accusation that I'm very much a fan of The Quartering, even though I don't watch him as often as you guys think I do. When he covers something that I'm actually interested in, maybe. But most of the time, I try to avoid this crap because my blood pressure's high enough as it is. But, I mean, even I looked at his argument and went, yeah, you're not going to go anywhere here. Especially not with Angry Joe. Angry Joe's going to continue writing his crap. And yeah, I'm going to call it crap now, because it hasn't been good for a while. He's going to keep writing it even though you wrote this hit piece on him. Legacy Killa, I don't really know. Clean Prince Gaming, I don't really know. Jim Sterling is going to keep going on. So is Jeremy Hamley.
I actually follow Clean Prince Gaming. That's where I got the story from.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
He's going to keep going, right?
Yeah, he's going to keep going.
That's the dumbest part about this whole deal is like, this guy's under the hopes, kind of like that other story we're not going to talk about because it is political and we can't avoid that one. This guy is trying to be Carlos Maza. He's trying to basically start up the outrage wagon and get some of these guys also booted off YouTube.
Yeah, problem is the wagon's already been towed to the junkyard. The thing that I thought when I read this, I'm just like, okay, why did this guy repost an article that was written 3 years ago? Because, 3 years ago, back in 2015, so 4 years ago, 2015, we were getting stories about how anger sells, how outrage sells. It's a case of, this is old news. This is stuff that, it's just regurgitated information that everybody already knew because it's been covered so many times. It's nothing new, at all.
Well, and what's frustrating about this especially is that it's so poorly written. Again, you and I, Romney, and I'm not sure about Alex because I didn't really meet anybody in the media with his college, but, we know people who could write this, that even on their worst day could write better than this guy. How does he have a job?
Well, sadly, the level of quality with online journalism has dropped substantially lower.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not talking just in terms of hyperbole. I mean, some of you may recall a website I was a part of called Movie Pilot that was basically trying to position itself as the geeky equivalent of BuzzFeed. And, well, Movie Pilot isn't around anymore.
No.
And that's because you had the same problem where, I mean, I can only speak for myself in this case, and even though I've never actually taken a journalism degree, I understood core journalistic concepts, fact-checking information, the inverse pyramid, something that is really, really important with journalism, where you put all the important facts first, and then the less important facts come after. Because what does the reader need to know? All the important stuff. You don't leave it to the end of the article. You put it up front, so that way it's a case of, hey, here's all the important information, and then you add the details. I literally got into so many arguments with so many of the other writers on Movie Pilot because they got so uppity of literally articles about fan art freaking fan art and fan theories
Yeah.
were being treated as news on Movie Pilot. That website was horrible, and that's why it doesn't exist anymore, because
Well,
it
it's
couldn't
why
make
a
any
lot
money.
of those are disappearing. I mean, we haven't really even covered this, but this happened in the month that we were gone. Is that Kotaku might not be around in the next 6 months because their funding their well is going dry. So
Yeah,
a lot of these outlets aren't going to be around anymore. It's their own damn fault.
Yeah, and it speaks to the underlying problem that a lot of people think. It kind of speaks to both the idea of outrage culture, but also the nature of anger in general. Granted, a lot of this has been on my mind because, as I've mentioned numerous times, I have issues with anger. I've been working with a therapist on it.
I think after doing this podcast, we all have issues with anger.
Yeah, but again, we literally have the Romney rant train where I was red in the face on camera for posterity. So,
yeah.
to kind of get to my point, why a lot of these sites are disappearing and why this isn't working, anger as an emotion, yeah, it gets you worked up, it gets you riled up, but if you stop and take a moment and don't actually act on your anger right away, it'll pass. Anger is a fleeting emotion, and once the demand for outrage and articles that get you riled up passes, naturally there's not going to be a desire for people who still want to read outrageous news. There are people who are going to want to read, actual news with actual research and actual legwork done by actual journalists. And that's why these websites are disappearing, is because the gimmick of getting riled up, being driven by outrage, it's a fleeting thing. It's literally a trend you're chasing, but it's like Beanie Babies. It's like Beanie Babies or Pogs. You chase it, you try to set aside thinking, oh, my grandchildren are going to inherit these Beanie Babies. But then the market turns down because the creator is like, hey, this is not what I intended for these toys. I'm taking them all off the market and making them absolutely worthless.
I'm just going to give you a modern reference just in case there are a few people who are younger than us that can get this. This story is the fidget spinner of news.
Oh, fidget spinners.
Oh yeah, those were.
I'm more hung up on Rami's reference to Pogs. Who remembers Pogs?
Dude, we get Pogs references all the time. So much so that somebody actually did bring up in an email once. It's like, do you guys still collect Pogs? It's like, no.
I never got
sadly.
into Pogs, but my two older siblings I think did. But
Oh, dude, I had a whole collection of Power Rangers Pogs, but I don't have it anymore.
I'm sure I had some too, but I didn't get any.
I remember I got some, or I saw some when I was like a kid, but keep in mind, I was like only like 2 years old when they were in the midst of like season 2 or 3, so my memory's kind of fuzzy. But that's my exposure to Pogs. It's just my brain was scrapping for cultural references of markets, and first came Beanie Babies, then came Pogs.
Well, I think Pogs predated Beanie Babies.
Yeah, but Beanie Babies, you had the Beanie Baby boom where everyone was trying to buy the discontinued Beanie Babies, and it got so ridiculous that the creator of Beanie Babies himself, frustrated with what parents were doing, decided, you know what, I'm going to just do all of this to make them completely worthless.
My mom was part of the Beanie Baby boom. As soon as she heard that some of those Beanie Babies went for like $10,000 on eBay, she was sold.
Yeah, literally the daycare that my mom would drop me off at in elementary school, she had a side business where she would sell the discontinued Beanie Babies for, like, she literally had like a little display case and boutique stuff that she would sell on the side. I doubt she held on to those Beanie Babies after, they basically became absolutely worthless.
No, I mean, in my case, it was my mom had been told by somebody, I don't even know if this is true or not, that one of the the limited edition McDonald's Beanie Babies that they were giving in the Happy Meals, that one could actually didn't bring in like $10,000, but it brought in like $2,000 or $3,000. And so at that point, she was on a hunt to get that one. And I remember like our car at one point being not full to the brim, but we had a lot of Happy Meals that day.
Yeah, and I mean, for disclosure, the other reason is because I still have my Beanie Baby. His name is Pugsley. I've had him since I was a kid.
Aww. See, that's...
Let's talk of Beanie Babies. Let's talk of Beanie Babies. Let me just quickly shout out Larry Bundy Jr. did a great video a year ago about Beanie Babies. Go watch it.
Okay. All right. So is there anything else we need to add on this? Because the bottom line, I think we've hit the nail on the head. This is all bull crap.
I got one more thing just because it kind of ties into also what's going on with the whole Vox situation. It's like, we're going to get, with every time there's like one of these little outrage scandals, it's like, you get the advertisers that pull out. I swear it's going to get to the point that for like okay, like your network shows, like your Jimmy Kimmel and whatever, those on YouTube, those will get all like the big brand ads and whatnot. Well, the rest of us are gonna get like the kind of ads you find on like less than scrupulous video streaming sites and porn
We'll
sites
get
and
other
those.
YouTubers ads.
Yeah.
We're gonna get junk ads. I
I mean-
remember, Adam, when you complained like a while ago, you were getting Scientology ads. I mean, that's why we're getting Scientology ads. It's like we're getting
I'm
the bottom
a
of the
fan of
barrel.
Steven Crowder, and I get annoyed at the fact that I get Young Turks ads every time I tune into an episode. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, we're at a point where people are literally watching Social Blade like the stock market. I'm surprised people haven't actually tried, treating it like the stock market, where you have people like, okay, we're gonna buy some shares in this YouTube channel. Okay, the market's up, we sell, or you buy more. I mean, I can see that's how advertisers would probably do it. It's like, okay, which YouTuber is going to go down? Okay, this one's on the rise. Let's buy in. Oh no, he's down. Gotta sell.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's the best way to go about it.
But was that all you needed to add? For a second there, I was getting worried. I was thinking you were going to bring up the other story.
No, that's it. That's
Okay.
all I wanted to add. It's just like, just give it time. YouTube is gonna have ads that you find on like, piracy video streaming sites and porn sites, and it's like, oh my gosh, now I gotta worry. It's gonna become eBob's world all over again. I gotta worry about getting a virus by going to YouTube.
Pretty much.
Except here's more than likely what will happen between the Scientology ads and the Young Turks ads. We're going to get more and more ads for YouTube Music or YouTube TV or YouTube Premium.
Yep. Which I'm not paying for. But
I did a trial once because I wanted to watch Cobra Kai, but
I remember on this podcast I've gotten a lot of flack for not having services like YouTube Red, so that I could better support creators that I liked. And part of the reason that I will never ever get that subscription service is because I want to support the creators, but the other half of that is that you have to support the monster. And so never really interested in supporting the monster that is YouTube.
Plus Patreon's a thing now.
Yeah. And other different kinds of tipping services. Like
that rose
so
from some of them existed before that, but now we have a bunch of other services rising up in light of the Patreon debacle that happened last year. So
it's just I have subscription fatigue already, and I don't have that many subscriptions. But it's like I can't afford to pay
I will
50
tell you,
different monthly fees.
I'm glad you brought that up because, and I promise after this tangent we'll actually move on. But I don't know about you guys, but after all of the various YouTube debacles that we've had to cover over the years, I've almost I woke up after hearing the Voxpocalypse that's being brought up in the chat, and I was just like, you know what? I'm done following big creators. I'm just done following you all. You all are making this hard for me. I'm done supporting you. I'm done subscribing to you. I'll occasionally watch your videos, but I'm done. I literally almost wanted to purge all of my subscriptions on YouTube of any big channels, and by big I mean anything above 10,000 that I followed, because I'm just fed up. This whole deal. It doesn't matter if they're medium size, small in comparison, or anything like that. They all do things that shoot me in the foot. Rant over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, let's just all take a nice deep breath.
And with that, let's get into the stuff that people wanted us to talk about, especially in regards to this week. So, E3 is next week. Now, usually this podcast does full-on E3 coverage. I'm going to be making some announcements on that in a little bit, but there is something that I want to cover here because in the week before E3, technically in 2 weeks before E3, this is where you start to hear the weird rumors that might be getting announced at E3. And our listeners actually wanted us to cover a few of the ones that did get announced. The first one relates to Alex, whether or not he has seen the announcement for Yooka-Laylee: The Impossible Lair.
Yeah, I just saw the trailer today.
And are you mad at it?
Am I mad at it? Well, at first, I wouldn't say mad, but at first I was a little I don't like this whole top-down shift. But when I saw that there's also 2D side-scrolling in it, I'm like, you know what? I'm actually interested now that I want to check it out.
I actually like the change, and I think we'll get some explanations at E3 that will justify it. So, hey, Platonic, go and do what you want to be able to go do. The next ones that we're going to be covering are fairly bigger ones. First of all, that Ubisoft supposedly is going to announce their own subscription service.
Because that worked well for EA.
They didn't already with Uplay?
Well,
I'm asking honestly, because if that was not what that was supposed to be, then I want to sue them for all of the pelted advertising I got when I played Assassin's Creed games.
yeah, I'm just reminded of the Dorkly skit where at first it's like, what if Sega made Mario, and then Mario wakes up realizing his dream's like, no, we are made by Ubisoft, and then Mario's like, no, it's like, would you like to open Uplay, brother?
Exactly. That's literally what would happen. You get pelted with 4 Uplay notifications before you even got to the damn game.
Well, unless that's the idea behind the subscription service, where you're literally just paying a subscription to be able to skip those adverts. That's what you're paying for.
Pretty much. That pretty much also explains EA's subscription service. Moving right along, we also have the rumor, I don't even think that this is legit because, well, Randy Pitchford has pitched too many fits over the last couple of months. But apparently there's going to be new Borderlands 2 DLC that's supposed to coincide with Borderlands 3. Again, I don't think that that's possible because, well, Randy Pitchford is too busy acting like an 8-year-old. Seriously.
As you do.
He really is. Like, I know that a lot of our listeners have wanted me to have wanted us to cover the temper tantrums on Twitter and everywhere that Randy has been having, but why? It's pretty much what we've been hearing from EA, from 2K, from all of those other North American developers. What's different about it?
So basically, you instead of Randy Pitchford, he's Randy Bitchford.
You said it, not me. And therefore, let's go on into the next rumor. Now, this one is actually halfway interesting. THQ Nordic, I do know that after the release of Darksiders 3, they've had a little bit of success. So much so that they've announced that 2 of their 2 games that they are going to announce at E3 under the THQ license, or bunch of licenses, one of which is going to be a Darksiders game, although I'm not sure on what it's going to be, either a sequel or a prequel. It's going to be called Darksiders Genesis. So that makes sense, because Darksiders 3 did well. But the other one pitched a few eyebrows, as it's going to be a remake of a game that came out in the PS2 era called Destroy All Humans. For those who don't know what this was supposed to be, back in the PS2 days, when GTA 3 hit the scene and forever changed sandbox games, Destroy All Humans was a THQ derivative that was more silly than criminal. Basically, you were going to be playing a alien, like an old gray alien, like big head, little body, going to 1960s Earth.
Well, the first one is in the 1950s. The
That's right.
is
There is a second one. I wasn't sure. 50s Earth and then 70s Earth, and basically causing a bunch of crap to happen. Like you're basically going into like all of those rampages you go on in GTA games. Now you could do that, but with a UFO
and an anal probe that makes people's heads explode. Yep.
Or turn them into cows.
Well, yeah, turn them into cows. It was an interesting game series, and
yes, and a reference fest. Again, so
yeah, a reference fest, and also at least with the second game, punishing you for how many times you died with a side quest. Where in Destroy All Humans 2, because the main character Cryptosporidium comes from a species that has basically only survived by cloning, and there's a side quest where you're basically establishing a cult throughout the world in Destroy All Humans 2. And then a human you appointed as the leader of this cult goes rogue and turns on you. But here's where the kicker is. Because you start out as Cryptosporidium 636, and that number goes up every time you die, because that's how many times they have to clone you. And based on how many times you die, that's how many times you have to deal with Shamalama, the name of the cult of Arkvoodle. And the game literally tells you he's been granted as many lives as you've died. You should have dodged more.
Yeah, so I can already tell that at least one of us is going to be buying this remake. So
probably not. I'm going to wait until I see a trailer.
I'm going to be buying it because I do know a friend of mine was a big fan of the Destroy All Humans games. So I probably will buy it for him. But yeah, so we have a new Darksiders, which is either a prequel or a sequel, not sure which, and a remake of Destroy All Humans.
Which I just have to wonder, Darksiders Genesis, does that mean, because we've controlled war, we controlled death, and then they controlled fury because apparently famine and pestilence don't lend themselves to gameplay.
And considering the art that we've seen, Genesis will be war again.
Yeah, well, that dashes my theory, where it's like, oh, Darksiders Genesis, so we're controlling Adam or Eve,
Something.
and this is just a very messed up retelling of Genesis.
Darksiders does not. It's Darksiders, and I'm sorry, Darksiders fans, but it doesn't have as much lore as you think it does. It really does play off the fact that it's winging it in a lot of cases. So, I mean, great, good on you. You're going to get a new Darksiders game. I'm more excited for Destroy All Humans, but that's just because I played that game, and it was hilarious.
Although that would be a very weird crossover. Like, you're playing as War, you're running around, and then suddenly you just come across Cryptosporidium, and then he tries to probe you, and you have to run from him.
Well, you think that's funny. Let's get into the next rumor, and you see whether or not this is funnier. George R.R. Martin and From Software will reveal a collaboration. So, the game series that likes to kill you a lot collaborates with the director of the HBO show that likes to kill people a lot.
No. He's not the director. He's the writer of the original novels.
And, well, he was also a writer on Game of Thrones for a while, wasn't he?
Well, he was more of a consultant, but only to a certain point, where after I think the third season, the TV series and the books had diverged enough that he basically had to tell his fans on Twitter saying, hey, I don't have as much control. They've kind of gone on their own direction. So, yeah. My immediate thought when I look at this, and I'm just like, why did From Software not see what was going down with everyone going crazy over the finale of Game of Thrones? And honestly, the more obvious choice was, okay, why George R.R. Martin? What? Could you not get a hold of Kentaro Miura? You know, the guy whose manga literally inspired the Soul series?
Yeah. I mean, me and my brother have been making jokes about this all day. The George R.R. Martin and Dark Souls are merging together to kill more people. That's because there's nothing else you can do with it until they officially announce.
Yeah, although, to be fair, a lot of the stereotype of the amount of deaths in Game of Thrones, that's actually a product of the television series, not so much the novels themselves, because with the TV show, they can make certain seeming less significant characters seem a lot more important, which means more people get attached to said characters, which is what makes the deaths dramatic. That's something even George R.R. Martin has pointed out, saying, hey, the fact that I kill everyone, that's more of a product of the TV show, because they expand on things that I've written when they're making their own show. So I just look at this and I'm just like, why? Of all the things to collaborate with, I mean, I get it. It's a fantasy author, and I get it because the Tolkien estate probably wouldn't want to work with From Software, and Warner Brothers kind of has a stranglehold on that, but of all the choices, this just seems baffling, considering Game of Thrones is very much, yes, it's a fantasy series, but it's more of a political series than it is
It's a political
epic.
intrigue series.
Yeah, and that's more the idea. And so I just don't see how that could translate to something that From Software could create, because it just doesn't really lend itself to that.
Especially considering that the Dark Souls games, now granted, Dark Souls fans will probably disagree with me on this, but from what I understand of them, they're not really all that well tied together. They're more looked at as their own kind of one-shots kind of deal. I know some people would disagree and say I think it's like 1 and 3 are connected, but Bloodborne, Neo, all those games. Well, Neo might be a bad example, but like Bloodborne's not connected. Dark Souls 2 apparently isn't connected to any of them. Demon Souls isn't connected.
Yeah, and Demon Souls was what started it all. And again, I look at this, and for people who didn't understand my reference earlier, Kentaro Miura, he's the mangaka behind the long-running fantasy manga series Berserk, a manga series that is known for being very dark, atmospheric, and gory, that the people at From Software had made it clear was a clear inspiration, down to the armor designs, and even the fact that there's a way in the game where you can customize your character to look like the main character Guts from Berserk. Granted, it means your stats are kind of crap, but it's a case of, hey, if you want the red cape, if you want the huge, impossible to swing, like, black sword, there you go. You can make yourself look like the Black Swordsman. And so I look at this, I'm just like, of all the things, I mean, was George the only one who returned your phone calls From Software?
Now, these are just some of the rumors that are happening at E3. We're not going to go into all of them, but I actually did reach out to a few listeners from the RSS feed to ask specific questions of like what questions would you ask us of E3 this year? And I did get a couple that came up regular, so I want to ask just the panel on their thoughts on this one. The first question being, would you like to see a new console unveiled at E3 this year? And technically, we're supposed to get one because Xbox did promise to bring the new Xbox to E3 2019. Now we're not so sure because they have announced that they will be doing a separate event later in the year, and really considering the last gen, that's kind of how they're going from here on. But would you guys like to see a new console unveiled at E3?
Honestly,
Not particularly.
yeah, not really. I mean, these things are really expensive, and again, disgruntled Wii U owner over here who dragged his heels on buying a Switch. Given how expensive it was,
We just
getting
need a
the PS
T-shirt of Romney just like pointing to himself, and up above it says "disgruntled Wii U owner here."
Well,
Sad Wii U gamepad.
Yeah, I mean, I still use my Wii U
Marta,
because
you're on it.
But yeah, but looking at this, I'm just like, not really. I mean, we've got a few more years in this generation. Maybe wait until what you have to show is a little further along. Don't
Yeah.
pull a Square Enix.
That's kind of my viewpoint on the matter. Is like, I don't need to have a console unveiled at E3. If there is one, great, cool. I mean, we're already talking about PS5 and the new Xbox, and whether or not Nintendo will have a Switch successor. Even though I don't buy that. I think
It's way too soon
it's
for a
way
Switch
too
successor.
soon, and I think that they're trying to establish they're too busy trying to establish the Switch right now and show like this is what we can do with it. So at that point, I'm not really looking for a console to be unveiled. If there is one, fine. I will tell you this right here and now: I probably won't be buying it right off the bat. With that, let's go into the next question. So I know that people have questions for that, but you'll get an answer soon enough. What games would you like to see revealed or talked more about at E3? Now, Pokemon fans, I'm just going to go ahead and get this out of the gate right here and now. Yes, we had a Sword and Shield Nintendo Direct that happened a few days ago. We have a release date. We have a couple of more Pokemon. So, I mean, that technically is talked more about. I'm not restricting it, but for all the people who are like, we want to hear more about Pokemon. You did. You just might hear more. So, that being said, games you would like to see revealed or talk more about?
Well, off the top of my head, at least looking at the list of the speculation compiled by the IGN article, the only one that I'm moderately curious about, I mean, granted, yeah, there's Fire Emblem Three Houses, but what we've seen, we pretty much have a pretty good idea of how the game's going to play, and it's set to come out later this year, later like next month, so them doing any sort of major reveal for Three Houses would just be kind of meh, plus Nintendo's, got their own directs. But
I think the most you'll get like a trailer for that.
Yeah, because I mean, the gameplay, everything's already been effectively explained about how Three Houses is going to work. But the project that does have my attention, it could be because I'm on a bit of a Marvel kick in the wake of Endgame, and that would be Square Enix's Avengers project.
Yeah, which
Because
a lot
that
of people are still improperly assuming that Ultimate Alliance 3 was that. It's not. Square
Nope.
Enix has clarified. This is a whole other project.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what they plan to do, especially given the position that we have with the MCU, because we had Endgame, we had the bow out of Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. Chris Hemsworth is signed on for one more film, Guardians 3. It raises the question, is it going to tie into the MCU, or is it going to be its own separate thing like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, there have been people speculating, is it going to be an MMO, or is it going to be one of those games where you can choose to play as an Avenger but can also create your own Avenger. And so something that would kind of at least give an idea of what the hell they plan on doing would be nice. At least as in terms of with a property like the Avengers, and now that Disney owns Fox, now that merger has gone through, it's now a case of, hey, you don't have to, cut out the X-Men or the Fantastic Four anymore. There's a lot of possibility here, and I'm curious to see what Square would do with it. Just do us all a favor, Square. Keep Nomura away from it, please.
Nomura needs sleep. Nomura does not need new projects.
We do not want to wait another 15 years for another game. Just, I mean, if
No.
Nomura like say, oh, can I like do some designs for it? That's fine. Just like, okay,
I will not
okay,
have
you do-
gamers be responsible for the death of Tetsuya Nomura, okay?
Yeah,
That's too
I'll
much
just-
on my plate.
I will just say this: if Tetsuya Nomura says like, "Oh, hey, can I design like maybe a skin for some of the characters, or maybe just do some character artwork?" Just ended it there. It's like, okay, Nomura, you can do artwork, you can design a skin, but that's it. Go back to Hawaii, go surfing with Sakaguchi-san.
And Uematsu-san. I think he's out in Hawaii.
No, Uematsu I think is still in Japan, and I know he's
okay.
been having to take a break from touring for health reasons. So, but I know with Sakaguchi, Mistwalker is based in Hawaii, so
There
that's so. It's a case of where I mean, if Nomura wants to do artwork for it, that's fine, but don't let him join on the project as a director. I mean, we've been
And
waiting long
also
enough.
do not let him talk to any journalists walking out of the building. None.
No, basically,
Lock
you have
that
to pull
shit down.
You basically have to pull a Tom Holland with Tetsuya Nomura. Don't give him a script. Don't tell him it's a wedding. Don't give him any information.
So, Alex, are there any games you need to see revealed or talk more about at E3?
None come to mind, also because the kind of games that I'm probably the type to play are not going to be shown off at E3.
I mean, like Pokemon. I mean, that's something you could
Yeah,
get
but
excited about.
I don't think that's going to be at E3. I think that would just be a Nintendo Direct or another Pokemon event.
Well, there's going to be a Direct at E3.
Oh, okay. So then, yeah, I guess I would like to see some more about Sword and Shield.
Okay. So, and also the other elephant in the room that probably will get a little bit more insight will probably be Death Stranding, because it is coming out this year. We do actually have a release date of November 15th. But as for my list, I mean, I'm going to go with Romney here and say the Avengers Project has got me very interested in what it actually could be. I kind of hope it doesn't go the MMO direction, just because I don't really see MMOs lasting much longer.
Yeah, just look at what happened to Marvel Online.
I know that a lot of people want to say, well, as long as World of Warcraft is running or Old Republic are still running, well, those are kind of dying down. And so at that point, I don't see MMOs lasting past that point.
Yeah, lest we forget, City of Heroes. There's a reason that it eventually bit the dust.
Yeah, pretty much. The other ones that have me a little bit perked up, I will say on the EA side, I'm interested in Jedi Fallen Order, but not enough to watch their panel or their press conference on it. I would have liked to have seen a Sony conference just to see if they had any other second-party titles to be able to announce, but they're not going to be there. Xbox really hasn't done enough to keep me interested. I've actually just kind of decided I'm only interested in the Square Enix panel, because a lot of games there that I'm interested to see what they're going to do with next, and the Nintendo Direct, just because, again, I'm more interested in the games. And one thing that I should probably mention kind of on the tail end here, there are two very interesting rumors coming out of the Square Enix press conference that have not necessarily been proven with too much credibility, but I want to at least bring them up to Romney because I'm getting pelted to bring it up. So there are two rumored games that might be revealed on the Square Enix press conference, one of which is apparently a deal has been struck, and we will be seeing a revisit to the Parasite Eve universe. Not sure if I buy that.
I don't really buy it because, again, I mean, people think, oh, a deal has been struck. Again, if they were able to reacquire the rights to the Parasite Eve novel from Hideaki Senna, that would have been reported. That would have been major news. But I doubt it because I know
this is not something that I see them trying to do in Cloak and Dagger tactics in a boardroom. I really don't.
No, and looking at this, it's also just a case of where, Parasite Eve, very influential, was a very well-crafted game, and the story itself is a pretty good story, but it's a case of, with the amount of effort it would take to reacquire the rights, Square would probably just more than likely just try to do their own thing, but that didn't exactly work out. Case in point, Third Birthday.
Yeah. The other rumor, and this might have credibility to it, but I'm still doubting on it. One other game that we're going to hear about, bar none, it's going to be there, is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. We've had new trailers, we've had new artwork show up, and they've already said in the trailer that there will be more announced in June. So at that point, if they didn't actually mean like a Final Fantasy VII orchestra, then it will be at E3. And at that point, the other rumor is that they will also announce the Final Fantasy VIII remake.
Nah, it's not going to happen.
That one, I'm a little like, okay, I will say this optimistically about it. If they announced it, I'd be kind of on board. And the only reason I'd be on board with it is because I do actually like a lot of what they're doing with the 7 remake and the new gameplay systems that they're adding to it. I still don't think it should be episodic, Square Enix. And
Yeah,
I do have some beefs with that, but 8 had a bad gameplay engine to begin with, so they could only go up from there.
Yeah, but here's what I would see. I doubt they would announce another remake when they haven't even released.
Not at all. That's my biggest problem here.
Yeah.
Is
Like,
they still haven't gotten the 7 remake out.
Yeah, and so most that I could see, because, I mean, they talk about, oh, there isn't a remake, even though they also promised to have remakes of 5 and 6 after the remake of 4. Most I can see with anything Final Fantasy VIII related, and I highly doubt Square Enix would do this, because they would have done it by now if they had any intention. Not a remake, but maybe a remaster, like what they did with Final Fantasy IX, where it's a case of, hey, we're going to touch up the graphics,
I don't even
make
think
it playable.
they can do a remaster of 8. From what I heard, like, they lost a lot of the code for 8.
Yeah.
So I don't think they can do a remaster, but a remake they could.
Probably.
Probably, but a remaster is also likely, because, again, the same thing actually was
That's what people have been begging. Like, we saw the deluge of Final Fantasy games announced for Switch that were coming out, and everyone was like, no 8? What? No 8?
Yep, but here I can say this. Them losing the code is not necessarily a deterrent, because that's exactly what happened with the original Kingdom Hearts, which was why we got the HD remasters, was because it was a case of, well, we need to remake these games from scratch. We may as well remake them in higher fidelity and, you know, milk that cow for all it's worth.
Agreed.
Doesn't matter if it's 15 years old and withered.
So there you go. That pretty much covers the rumors here and also kind of our thoughts here. The third question is kind of what I've been alluding to for a while. People might remember that in previous years, we've made E3 kind of a big deal. We've gone out of our way to do all the coverage, to be able to say, like, best and worst press conferences and things like that. And the question that I got here was, will you be doing coverage of E3 like last year? And I have some bad news. It's not going to be exactly like last year. And the main reason being is that E3, even though we have a lot of really cool things getting maybe announced a week before, we went a couple of strong months where we were hearing this person's dropping, this company's dropping, this console maker's not going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And ergo, we've also been saying over the last couple of months we're not really excited for this year's E3. So at that point, what's going to happen is simply this. We will be doing coverage for it, but it's going to be lessened. Usually we do like a full 2-hour podcast covering only E3 and all of the stuff that gets announced. But I don't see this year's E3 being all that big. So we'll probably have some other stories that will get announced or that we'll talk about at the beginning of the podcast next week. But then for like the last 45 minutes, we'll go into like bests and worsts of E3. I do know that our buddy Brinton is going to be joining us for that because he is planning on watching the Xbox conference as well as Square Enix. But that's pretty much it. Like, it's going to be significantly less than what we've done before, and it's simply because despite the announcements that are happening right now, there's not a whole lot there to be excited for. Like, I'm not going out of my way to watch EA's press conference. I'm not interested. They have not done enough to be able to bring me in for another year. Square Enix has got a lot of mystery around it, so I'm interested in that. Plus, I would love to be able to see if we get some kind of hint towards Kingdom Hearts 3's DLC as well as Final Fantasy VII Remake to see if... I'm more watching that trailer because I'm worried about the direction they're going with 7. But that's discussion for another time. So bottom line, we will do it, but it's going to be lessened. It's not necessarily going to be like, we watched these trailers and oh my gosh. It's going to be like what news we were able to come across and what got us excited and what didn't.
Yeah, more specifically, like what, and another way to put it is what specifically got our attention.
Yeah, pretty much. So I hope that answers you guys' questions. It's not that we're trying to be difficult or anything like that. It's just E3 this year. I actually honestly think we might get one more E3, but then after that, it's going to be solely Sony events and Xbox Online events that we'll get from here on. because they're they're just easier to put together.
Yeah, less financial risk. You can easily do, especially given that internet streaming with online video, it's cheaper for these companies to just do it in-house in their own facilities. You don't have to worry about flying executives out all the way to California.
And you don't have to worry about demo
offices.
kits that won't work or anything like that. You can show the games the way that you want to show them.
Yep. I mean, and even if it's a case where you don't have a lot to show, you can control what you can show and find a way to make it look even fancier, even if there's barely anything.
Yep.
Which you think Square Enix would probably have gotten better at by now, but, well, lo and behold.
And since we have like 15 minutes left, there is actually one little bit of extra news that I want to be able to get in with our audience, because it's not like we've been sitting idle the last month, just, sitting on our thumbs and doing nothing and maybe working on content. We've actually been discussing quite a bit on the podcast, and there are a couple of things that I'd like to address tonight, starting with one. So I've been following the listeners, even though I've been dealing with funerals and everything like that, and there actually was one comment that I got that irritated me a little bit, and it was, I'm guessing, from a new listener via the RSS feed, where they were basically, actually no, it was a new listener via YouTube, and they basically kind of, I don't want to say tirade, but got mad at the fact that we were announcing all of these RSS feed exclusive content that's going to be brought in, and in his words, he just wants to come home and be able to crack open a cold one and listen to us on YouTube. Can't we just be happy with doing stuff on YouTube? And I want to address that just a little bit. And to do that, I have to break the vaunted political rule. Okay? We've been seeing the situation with the Vox-Adpocalypse happening between Steven Crowder and Carlos Maza. And I'm going to use that to simply say that this isn't the first time we've seen conflicts like this, and that's why the RSS feed is necessary. Because on literally the flip of a switch, the flip of a dime, things can change dramatically on YouTube. Enough so that as a platform, YouTube is not necessarily the most reliable thing anymore. It really isn't. That's why we've been doing a lot of this exclusive content for the RSS feed, because we can actually go with much more security that direction than we can with YouTube. Does it suck for people who only want to watch us on YouTube? Yeah, it does. But the bottom line is that I hate to be this guy, and I hate to be a braggart or anything like that, but a lot of people, despite this person, have come over to the RSS feed and tried out the new stuff that we're doing on the RSS feed and enjoyed it. And that's the support that we love and appreciate from you guys. We love you guys on YouTube too, and maybe we'll find a way to be able to bring some of this stuff there. But the bottom line is that the exclusivity is kind of necessary at this given point. YouTube is not necessarily, like, I kind of like how Tipster put it on Twitter yesterday, which is simply put that if you ever had aspirations of being able to do YouTube full time and be able to quit your day job, in light of this Vox-Adpocalypse that's happened, keep your day job. Bottom line, because the dream is done. You can't do it. And in my case, where I love doing YouTube, at this point it's nothing more than a hobby for me. But I worked hard to be able to put this podcast together, and I've worked hard every year trying to keep it going. So that's why I do rely on the RSS feeds, because there's more potential for that to grow in an RSS feed than it does on YouTube. If I let the podcast stay on YouTube, it plateau. Mm-hmm. There'd be no growth. Whereas with the RSS feed, since the migration, we've had lots of growth. I'm very happy to say that to you guys. There's been lots of growth.
Yeah, plus another factor to consider is that as much as we like YouTube, recent events have made it pretty clear it's a one-sided relationship. As you may recall from when I made my video explaining why I had to step away, it's a case where YouTube is no longer a safe place for us as creators. No. It just isn't.
No, it really isn't. And that's hard to say, considering that I do enjoy making the content that I do on YouTube. I love sitting down with Alex and playing video games and doing Let's Plays on the Draken Shadow channel. I really do. I genuinely do. Despite, in fact, one of the things that I've really missed because of all the bad stuff that's been happening this past month is doing the podcast, is doing the recordings with Alex, because I've had no time to do it. And frankly, I'd probably be in a much better mood if I had, kind of thing. I would be enjoying life a lot more than I have in the last week or so, mainly because of all the depressing stuff that's been happening around me. So it's not that we don't like that content. It's that, unfortunately, there's no merit in it anymore, aside from being a hobby, it's something that we do on the side, kind of deal. And who knows, maybe the channels will need to change. I have a couple of videos on my channel that will explain kind of what I'm doing with it, but that's why the RSS feed needs to exist. So I'm sorry that irritates you, but I will make it as easy as possible for you guys to get over to that RSS feed and be able to get access to that content. I really will. I will go out of my way to be able to give that to you. And in response to that, I'd like to announce some of the stuff that we're going to be doing starting now. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is RSS exclusive. But just to kind of get you guys excited about what's going to be coming to that feed from here on in. People might remember a couple of weeks ago, we got a very good question of like, okay, you guys don't want to pay for $15 a seat for current movies. What about doing old movies? Well, I'm happy to announce that we are here to announce Geek News Movie Night. So, we took your advice to heart. We're going to get together. The plan is at least that we're not going to necessarily do this like once a month or anything like that. Right now, it's going to be like once a quarter, unless you guys really want more of it. But we're going to get together. We are going to pick, or one of us will pick a theme. And then the others of that panel will pick movies surrounding that theme. And you guys get to vote on what the movie we watch is. And then we will do a Geek News Movie Night episode based on that. I don't have any announcements for that right now. Aside from, I actually do... Well, should we do the first theme at the very least to get people excited?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
So the first theme is going to be from me, because I'm the host of the dang podcast, and I'm pulling an executive decision, damn it. Our first Geek News Movie Night will be scheduled in July. And the theme for that will be summer blockbusters. Movies that you can just sit back and eat a big old bowl of popcorn while watching. That's all it is. So we're going to pick four movies, one from each of us, and then you guys get to decide which movie we watch and have fun with. And then the process will start all over again. So whomever's movie gets picked, they get to pick the next theme, and then we'll introduce movies for it. This will probably bounce back horribly because somebody will introduce horror, and then I'm going to be screwed. But that's the way it goes.
Well, you'd be screwed. Me, though.
Never let Romney win. That's what I'm learning from this. No, so that is Geek News Movie Night. Is that all that we have tonight? No. Our second announcement is another thing that we've heard in listener questions and things like that over the years is you guys do a lot of movie reviews, but you don't really do game reviews. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's $60 for a game. Especially if it's going to be a game that we're all interested in. That's a lot of money for us to be able to dole out. And, well, some of us have food to buy, rent to pay, things like that. So it's not really all that feasible to be able to do game reviews. However, we are going to do what I'm calling Geek News Game Talk. Again, RSS feed exclusive. Sorry, guys. But what basically is going to happen is if a new game comes out that 2 or 3 of us are playing, we'll get together and we'll talk about it. We'll give you guys our thoughts on... Here's a good example. Pokemon Sword and Shield is due in November. I could think of at least 1, 2, 3, 4 panelists that we can bring on there to talk Pokemon Sword and Shield. And we'll just sit back and we'll talk about it. It won't be a review, perchance. We'll talk about the positives and the negatives. But it's not necessarily going to be a full-on review. But we'll sit back and we'll talk about Pokemon. Or, I mean, Death Stranding is also coming out around that time, too. So I can already think of 1, 2, 3, 4 panelists that are interested in that, and we could talk about it. So Geek News Game Talk is going to be happening and it will have the title of whatever we're talking about. So Pokemon Sword and Shield, Death Stranding, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, doesn't really matter. As long as we can get at least 2 of us together to talk about it for a little while, that's the plan. So there you go. There's another awesome announcement. We also have a bigger announcement in the form of Gaming with the Geeks. People might notice there's a little sub-series that we do where we get together, we do Let's Plays together, or we do these big old events where people might remember last year we did a playing of Night Trap, the anniversary edition, suggested by Alex, played by Alex. And the only person that was tortured was Alex. That didn't work out so well for Alex. But we're going to bring that back, and I'm actually happy to announce the Gaming with the Geeks is officially being renamed to Geek News Game Night. So not only can you get these Let's Plays of like Devil May Cry with me and Brinton, or Kojima games with Romney and Alex, but you can also get big Smash events or other things like that on the exact same tagline. So that's going to be awesome, because that's something that I would definitely like to be able to do again. And we would like to do again, but we just have to find the time to be able to do it. So there you go. So you already have a bunch of new shows that are going to be RSS exclusive, that are going to be well worth your time, that you guys will be able to enjoy. And I'm very excited to be able to bring this to you guys. Another announcement that I have is a little bit of a bad news one. A lot of people like the Geek News Theater segments that we've been putting on the RSS feed, and been wondering why on earth we haven't been doing more of them. I wish I had a better answer for you. Time. It's why. We have 9 to 5s. We have families. We have family events happening. You know, Christmas happens. 4th of July happens. And so it's hard for us to be able to get together. So what's going to happen is we're not discontinuing it, but we have to find days to be able to get together to record a couple of scripts. When they are there, they'll show up on a podcast, but they're not gone. It's just we haven't been able to get together to be able to write those scripts, and we're very excited to be able to bring you more. I mean, we could probably do one for the Death Stranding trailer, for Pokemon, for a number of other things. It's going to work out. And then finally, the other thing that I want to bring up is... Sorry, I got to take a drink here. As you guys can hear, I've got a frog in my throat already. We've also been talking about the possibility of involving you guys a little bit more. Simply put, we love the contributions and the efforts and the support you guys have given this podcast. We really do love and appreciate it, especially me. And I hate to ask for more, but the bottom line is that without you guys, we wouldn't have gotten the growth that we have. And so I'm doing everything that I can, and I want to be able to ask you guys to be able to help out, but not necessarily without a reward. So one of the things we've talked about doing is in the future, I'm thinking like in the next little bit, we're going to encourage you guys to go out, review the podcast on iTunes, review it on YouTube, speak its praises, be able to get that notice out there. And for doing so, we're going to hold raffles, and we're going to give away gift cards and things like that. It's going to be pretty small, but we want to be able to encourage you guys to be able to get the podcast out, as well as incentivize you for doing so. Because we do love and appreciate you, and we do want to be able to give back for you guys' efforts just as much as the efforts that we've put in. So you guys can look forward to that very soon, being able to get things like Amazon gift cards or other things like that. For giving positive reviews on iTunes, or even just reviews on iTunes, or in other outlets, or just referring Geek News to your friends. We really do appreciate you guys' efforts in that regard, because it's not just an effort by us. It needs to be an effort from you guys as well. Romney's giving me a look of like, stop talking, please. Stop talking.
No, it's not that. I was just looking at my movie shelf trying to decide what to recommend for this first theme.
Well, I will already give my first recommendation. Since it is my theme, I already do have a recommendation. The theme is summer blockbusters. And my first movie to recommend is going to be, because it's time, I want to review this with you guys, the original Independence Day.
Damn, I was going to suggest that one.
I am suggesting the original Independence Day because, you know what? There is no review podcast out there that has done it that I have found, and it's got to have its day in the sun. It's got to. So that is Drax's recommendation for the original, not the recent one, not the Resurgence, the original Independence Day. So there you go. And you guys will get the reveals of these guys' picks in upcoming podcasts, and then we will hold a poll on Twitter and let you guys decide what we watch for the first Geek News movie night. And I'm very excited about that. But unfortunately, even though I'm very excited and very thankful for all the support you guys have given us, we have run out of time. So we will be back next week. I promise. We will be back next week to cover E3 stuff as well as any other stories that are happening. But in the meantime, if people want to be able to reach out to us, to check out our content, to be able to ask questions about our opinions on the stuff we cover tonight, Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do they do that with you?
Sorry, my stream was a little choppy. You're asking for me first?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so find me on YouTube, ShadowBlazer3000. Finally have a goddamn video up by then, hopefully. And follow me on Twitter, always be alerted for new stuff. I know I've been kind of dark lately, just been busy. So, at AlexJShort on Twitter, and you'll always be blasted out a brand new video there. Or just an anime meme, whatever I feel like.
Exactly. Stephen Romney, how do people get a hold of you and check out your content?
Well, if you want to look at the backlog of content that I've produced thus far, since again I'm still kind of taking a break from producing content, my YouTube channel, my handle both on YouTube and Facebook is Studio Ghost Utah. I, at least for a time, was uploading to both, and if I'm able to get back into creating content more regularly, I'll probably try to upload to both, since Facebook at least shows at least some promise as a video hosting service, but it's got its flaws. But if you want to engage with me more directly, there are two places where I'm a little bit more active. One of them is my Instagram, Romney Does Art, where I post pictures of cats, food that I cook, cats, random Nintendo game tidbits, and clips of things that I find that are cool, followed by more cats and more food that I cook, because I apparently want to start a cooking show for some reason. And so Romney Does Art is my handle on Instagram, and if you want to send me suggestions, not as active on it because my workplace has been, getting on my case about it. But that is also my Twitter, which if you want to send me suggestions, if you want to ask for my opinion about specific topics, seriously, Adam has got 2 kids, so it's month. So if you want to engage with me directly, Twitter is the best place, and that is at Romney Reviews. And as for the tradition, since it's been so long, it took me a while to find something to recommend. But since I've been on a bit of a Marvel kick, I've been going through some of the older stories that Marvel has released in recent years. So this week's recommendation is Avengers vs. X-Men. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Oh, why are you recommending that? It had all this controversial stuff. What I'm recommending specifically is the graphic audiobook version of Avengers vs. X-Men. The premise is simple. The Avengers detect that the Phoenix Force, the giant scary firebird that made Jean Grey go crazy, is on its way to Earth in order to basically have a new host in the form of Hope Summers. The Avengers naturally are freaked out, thinking, hey, if this gets to Earth, it's going to kill us all. Whereas the X-Men, whose mutant population has dwindled in the wake of House of M, thinks, hey, maybe we can kind of use this Phoenix Force to, revive our dwindling race. And, as the title suggests, hijinks ensue. The reason I'm recommending the graphic audio version is that it distills the story to the parts that work. You don't have to worry about hunting down all the different comics and issues that tie into the event. The graphic audiobook version that's available on 5 CDs presents a nice, simple version of the story that is easy to follow and is actually a really entertaining story that doesn't require any advanced knowledge. You don't have to have read House of M or the Dark Phoenix saga or any of the other prior events to it. It fills in the gaps. It keeps you informed. The voice acting is really well done with all of the characters involved, and there are a lot of characters to keep track of, so the people at Graphic Audio did a good job. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation, is the graphic audio presentation of Avengers vs. X-Men, available both on CD, and I believe you can also get it on Audible.
And also, for those who are interested, and I've been getting questions on this a little bit, is will we ever get to a point where in the description the links for Romney's recommendations will also be in the RSS feed? They will be. From here on in fact, I've actually been able to cover a few backlogged ones, specifically when Romney talked about Lost Tokusatsu on YouTube and a few others. We're going to be doing that from here on in too, so you guys can get a link directly to Romney's recommendations and be able to check them out for yourselves. So I'm happy to announce that as well.
Yeah, but until then, if you want to see the links to the recommendations, that's another reason to follow me on Twitter, because that is always where I post them at the end of every stream.
Yeah, that's where they go first. That's technically where I take the link from. So there you go. I'm a horrible person, according to some people. I just literally steal the link. But that's what I gotta do. So, if you guys want to follow me, the best ways to be able to do so are on my Twitter and on my Instagram, which are at Drac2326. If you follow my Instagram, you're going to get a bunch of pictures of my kids, pictures of cute stuff that happens with family. That's kind of what I do with that. That's where I get to be a dad, is basically what happens there, and I get to do all the dad jokes and all that stuff. On Twitter, if you guys want to ask me questions there, you're more than welcome to. And also, if you guys want to be able to follow the podcast directly, which is what we would recommend that you guys do above all else, we appreciate your support on YouTube. But the RSS feed is where we would tell you guys to go, which is geekynro.libsyn.com. I know that the RSS feed is still a little backed up. We're still working on that. I've actually got a bunch of episodes that are probably going to be coming up in the next week or so. So look forward to those. But yeah, geekynro.libsyn.com, as well as, and I should point this out, that is also where our Geek News movie review of Avengers Endgame will be. The last episode that we recorded before this month-long absence. If you guys want to check it out, it's over there. If you guys want to support the podcast via social media, you can do so under the exact same tagline, GeekyNRO, at Facebook and Twitter. And there you'll be able to get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stuff we'll be talking about. I actually want to bring up some other stories that maybe we don't talk about and get you guys' opinions instead of just ours. That would be awesome. You guys can follow those there. And then also, if you want to submit stories or submit feedback to us, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. We thank you guys so much for your patience and support in dealing with this month-long absence. But we are back, hopefully for a long time. But, life can happen. Who knows? But thank you all so much for your support and for your patience, as it's taken us a month to get back together. We will be back next week for even more Geek News, reviews, and opinions. So for me, for Alex, and for Romney, we will see you guys next time.